already, I just want to say welcome to our second installment of Virtual Tuesday Nights. If you missed last week, please go back to our Facebook page and watch that. We talked about leadership and nonprofit leadership during COVID-19. And if that's something that interests you, or if you're trying to figure out leadership right now, it's definitely worth your time to go watch last week's conversation. It was a panel just like tonight. But we're here tonight. Thank God that we're serving in a 2020 world where there's internet, where there's Zoom, where there's Facebook Live, and we can't really be stopped. We can keep this thing moving forward under any circumstances. So I'm just super thankful for that. We have an amazing panel. I'm going to be handing it off to Art here in a second, but before I hand it off, I just want to thank everybody that is partnering with iSSACHAR in whatever capacity that you're partnering, whether that be if you're a student, a mentor, you're giving your time, your finances, you're just a friend of iSSACHAR, alumni. I mean, the list goes on. However you serve, however you partner with us, we just want to say thank you. And you're what keeps this ship going. So thank you so much. And thank you all for being here tonight. I see some familiar faces. Kevin Taylor, I see you there. My dear wife, Paloma, Madison. We got a couple people online, so it's going to be a good night. But I'm just going to have our panel introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about who they are, what they do, and then I'll hand it off to Art, and he's going to kick it off. So we'll start with Heather. Heather, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and the work that you do?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Fleece. I hail from the great state of Minnesota, and my favorite part about it is the winter. So I pray that dangerous prayer that the Lord will never take me away from here. And even more weird, I am a junior high pastor by choice. And I have been at Wooddale Church in Eden Prairie, which is a southwest suburb, for 24 years as the junior high pastor. I oversee 7th, 8th, and 9th graders and their families, and I love it. They are the joy of my heart. I believe it's what I was created to do, and it's new and exciting for me on a weekly basis, and I'm so grateful. I'm married to my wonderful husband, Chad, and we have 2 large St. Bernards that collectively weigh 305 pounds. That is our family. And it's fantastic. And I represent, even on the hard days, the Minnesota Vikings.
Impressive.
Yeah. Impressive.
Thank you.
Impressive. There's a lot in there. Loving winter. That is a gift. That is a calling. It has to be. Cornelius, same thing. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Yeah, Cornelius Williams. I'm here in as my friend Heather said, in Hot Atlanta. I'm down here in Atlanta, Georgia, president of the Metro Atlanta Leadership Foundation, where we spend a lot of our time just trying to do some individualized training with nonprofit leaders. We do executive coaching with, nonprofit leaders, and we oversee mentoring programs throughout the Metroplex. I'm married 29 years. My wife told me last week, after being in the house for 3 weeks, that I have a deficit disorder. So that's real. I got 3 good kids. They're making good decisions. And I'm like you, Heather. I get a chance to work with 7th grade boys, and I just think the world of it. So I'm just glad to be here with y'all to chop it up and see what we can do to keep it cracking out here during this pandemic. Thank you, bro. And again, Anthony, that's a bad hat, bro. I said that to him earlier. I just want to put it out there publicly.
Thank you.
Man, that's just nice. That's nice.
Oh, man. I love it. Love it. Love the energy. Definitely got to come check you out when I'm in Atlanta again. And then last but not least, I'll hand it off to Art Williams. Art has been around forever on leadership. When I was like a knucklehead high school student, Art was like in the hallways, making sure we went to class and did things. So we're going to hand it off to Art. And Art, same thing, a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then you can just jump right into the conversation tonight.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks, Ant. Art Williams, born and raised in Denver, grew up downtown Denver, went to Denver North High School. I always say this for those folks that don't know me. Met my wife in the 6th grade. Started to date her in the 6th grade. I know, she's so lucky. It's crazy. I'm the lucky one. But we've been married now for going on 15 years. Got 3 little beautiful girls and a big Doberman pinscher. who was 7 years old. And so she's about 90 pounds. So I'm not there yet. 300 pounds is not running around in my house, but I'm close. But I've been doing ministry in the city of Denver for the past 20 years, started with the Sky's the Limit. You know, that's where I met the Lord and kind of fell in love with youth ministry, and then got introduced to Young Life through a couple good friends, but one in particular, Alvis Brooks. And we kind of just started to say, hey man, let's do ministry and run after kids in the city a little bit differently. Started at Montbello High School back in like 2002, and was with Young Life and on Young Life staff for about 17 years. Recently, I just transitioned off of Young Life staff to start a leadership foundation here in the Denver area, kind of doing something closely connected to what Corn talked about. And so Corn has been my mentor and partner for the last 2-3 years, and I'm excited to start in this new season. So with that, I'll get this conversation started. I'm not gonna lie, y'all, it's a little dangerous. It's just the three of us on the screen now. So this is like, we might be here till like 10:30 tonight, just, you know. You know, but I'll start by saying this. I'll pray, but, you know, I'll start by saying about 2-3 weeks ago, Scott and I started having conversation in regards to, you know, youth work, kind of around this time that we're living in, kind of the pandemic area, and trying to figure out, man, how do we stay effective? How do we stay encouraged? And how do we start thinking about what God may have for us on the other side? And so Scott asked if I would kind of help facilitate a conversation with some experts that are kind of running after kids in their local spots. And hopefully it's a little bit of an encouragement to you all, whoever's out there listening. I have no clue. I ain't gonna lie, this technology thing is a little different. But we got 4 questions we're gonna kind of cover. And I'll kind of ask those questions, and, you know, you guys just kind of chime in and let me know what you think, and we'll kind of see where this thing goes. So let me pray and we'll get this thing started. Lord God, I'm encouraged that you're still on the throne. I'm encouraged. Nothing is new to you. I'm encouraged that you care deeply about us, and I'm encouraged that you always provide a way. And so to you, as we think about ministry to kids, whether it be in Minnesota, Atlanta, Denver, or wherever else it may be, Chicago, LA, wherever it is, I pray that you would encourage leaders through the body, Father God, that we may pursue and seek you first, and out of the abundance of that, the overflow of that, comes life-giving ministry to those, Father God, that desperately seek it and need it. And so we pray for this conversation tonight. Pray it be guided by you. And we just give you this time in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, here we go.
All right.
First question. And I think this is a question that many folks have asked, right? And so I think it'll be cool to start, you know, just trying to hear some different perspectives of how you're responding as a leader. And so the question is, as a leader, how have you taken care of yourself in this season? What has been most helpful for you? Heather, ladies first, would love for you to kind of chime in and lead us off.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, I think I can speak on behalf of all 3 of us when I say to those listening, we are humbly coming to you tonight. Like, we do not have this figured out, right? So all the collective years combined, which I'm not good at math, but we're probably looking at close to 60. We've never experienced anything like this. So we're right with you. We're in the trenches, and we're trying to figure this thing out as well. So please don't hear us. I appreciate the title of expert, but please don't think of us as that. We are just those who are trying to pursue the Lord and use our gifts to glorify him and to keep walking in obedience. Right, guys? Yeah.
Yep.
So I think one of the things I'm thankful for is that I didn't start taking care of myself 4 weeks ago. I've been working on taking care of myself for probably about the last 20 years. I just learned pretty early on in ministry. It was, I would say probably in my mid-20s, that I was not the Messiah. And even though I love to problem solve and I love to come in and save the day, that wasn't good for me to do with my students and my families. And so I started plugging my cell phone in the bathroom rather than next to my bed at night. And I started taking a consistent day off and putting an outgoing voicemail saying, it's my day off. So if you're calling in regards to ministry, I'll give you a call back on Friday.
Good.
And doing things like that, knowing that if I wanted to be in it for the long haul, I had to take care of myself. And the Lord didn't call me to be a martyr. He called me to be smart and to use my gifts. And I like to say the term 100% God, 100% me,
Yep.
right? So he is going to be faithful. He is going to do his work, but he also gives me what I need to take care of myself and to draw boundaries and all of that. So I would just say that whether you are somebody who has done that before, that you need to continue that in. So even though my work week looks really different working from home, and man, does Sunday look different for somebody that's in the local
Yep.
church,
Yep.
I still take Thursday as my day off because that is a rhythm that I'm in, and it's been really healthy and really good for me. And that's the thing that I've seen most experts have been saying, especially in regards to leadership, that you need to have a rhythm and you need to have a balance and you need to have a schedule. So even simple things like getting up and showering, keeping your workouts. I started intermittent fasting a year ago. And even though it's so hard because my schedule is so different, I have stuck to intermittent fasting. So I eat from 12:30 to 8:30 every day, and I don't eat outside of that. And that has just really helped me to feel more stable. I'm not going to say in control, right? Because it's one thing we've all learned, there is no such thing. But it has helped me to feel more stable, that even though so much is changing around me, what I can control is not changing. So that's the first thing I'll say. And then I bet I can think, I want to bounce off of other things that you guys are saying.
Okay. Yeah. Corn, you want to jump in, bro?
Yeah, you got it. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah.
I would probably say for me, a little different than the season that Stacy's in. I'm in the process of kind of rebranding an organization. So I'm doing a lot of upstarting and growing and really trying to expand. And then, everything gets shut down. And so it's just kind of like, so wow. And being a nonprofit, I can't afford to stop activity because activity is one of the ways that I'm able to generate revenue to be for my stakeholders. And so, and my wife's a teacher. And so all of a sudden, here we are, I'm out trying to run a nonprofit. She's an educator. And then we show up in this space together. So initially, I would say, the full transparency, the first week we were sequestered, and that was the term I used. It was a little bumpy. We hadn't figured out designated spaces. And so once we were able to kind of have designated spaces where we could work, and then we began to try to establish some of those things that Heather said. Now, I will say this, as the president, and my proclivity is I'm a driver. And so I'm the thought leader. So I have to think and write and plan and strategize before I start one of my regularly 4 to 5 Zoom calls a day. And so I've changed the way I approach my work. I'm most alert in the mornings and in the evenings. So I take the afternoons off. And so I just kind of I go hard, I'll go from 4 to a good hard 2 o'clock. And then I'm done, run around, sit, watch the news, eat, take a nap, and then talk to my wife. And then I'll get back up and start to do some work, because it's in this season that I'm in, there's work that only I can do. And so that was trying to find that rhythm was helpful. I would say, though, some of the things that have come out of this is one of my gifts has been Marco Polo. I am a fool. I don't know who's on this call, but I am. And so me and a group of people that I work with, we just get on, just do dumb, stupid banter on Marco Polo. So that has been really life-giving, just senseless, makes no sense. And also, I have 3 biological kids and 2 other people that I call like my daughters. We've also used Marco Polo, but in a different way, where we are, I challenge everyone to take a day where they get up and they will share a devotion, read from a scripture, and to pray. And so what has happened is I've been more intentional to connect with people which has really, really been life-giving for me. It has really been life-giving. As a matter of fact, I think I'm more intentional in my connecting with my the people that matter to me more now than I was prior to this, because I don't take it for granted. So establishing designated spaces, as you said, Heather, I have a different rhythm to my day that I try to honor, and also engaging with friends and my family with Marco Polo have really been sustaining me. And also, too, I'll leave with this. Really, the language I use for you all, they're called downloads. That's the language I use. That's those moments when you get with God and he's just dropping. And so I'm being more intentional to be aware of when God is downloading things to me. And because, Heather, you were right, this is all new. I've never been here before, but it's like God ain't caught off guard. It's not like he's going, oh my gosh, hey, wait, what? What's going on? There's a pandemic. Hey, what do we do here? Hey, call a huddle. No, he ain't. No. So this is really about me getting in alignment with his purpose and plan so that I can somehow be a good steward of the resources he's trusted with me to accomplish his mission. So I need to get downloads. And so that's been refreshing. Been refreshing. So there you go, bro. Thank you, Heather. Art.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I would, I would echo a lot of the same things. The only thing I would add to it is, we live in a season where or in a generation where there's just a lot of noise, right? And so I think blocking out the noise for me has been really, really important, and so whether you turn on whatever news cycle you're listening to, right, you got one over here and you got one over there, and the sky's falling, or this is not, you shouldn't be nervous at all, right? And so you hear all these competing messages, trying to take over and create, in my opinion, just distraction, right? Like just confusion, if you will. And so for me, I've had to try to ground myself, right? Shut off the noise and remember who's on the throne, right? And really start to dig in personally with the Lord and ask questions, honest to God questions, like, hey, Lord, I'm fearful of this, right? And I know you say do not fear multiple times, right? And this is a command. And so what you command is not to do, to be fearful. But I'm a little bit fearful in this, situation. My wife is in the health industry, and so she's working, right? And so just the thoughts of, man, what she's exposed to and what she potentially may bring home, right? Like there's some real anxiety around that. And without me grounding myself and shutting off the noise and listening to what's true, those things can kind of overtake you, right? And so I would say you got to really be careful to not get moved off track. And you got to, you got to really seek the Lord's face, and you got to really seek the Lord's voice in this season. And so, and I agree, Corn. I got a group of fellas that I connect with every Saturday morning. And it's fun to talk through, just silly stuff, sports still, and family stuff. And I mean, we get into it. Like, hey, what are you thinking about this? What are you not thinking about this? And we spend about 2 hours on the phone, and so it's pretty encouraging. I would also agree that a routine is really important. Even though, if I'm being honest, my routine for the last 3 weeks has been crazy, right? Like, I'm like, I haven't been prepared to be a full-time teacher, like, so my wife goes to work. I'm like, oh my God. Like, it's bringing back up some old wounds with me in school. And so, I had this joke with a running joke. I'm like, look, it's hard to be the teacher, the lunch provider, the dad, still trying to do work stuff as I'm trying to launch a nonprofit leadership foundation. So trying to find a rhythm, I think, is extremely, extremely important to create some sort of stability. So I think all those things are really important. Would you say anything else? Would y'all add or chime in before we move to the next question about just taking care of yourself? Corn.
Yeah, man. I one of the things that you can't be where you aren't, right? You just can't be where you aren't, man. I mean, like, man, it's just, I ain't got no shame. Look, man, there are days. My wife told me I have an attention deficit disorder. And also, it was really good. she also said, hey, prior to the stay-at-home order, I used to call her at 4 o'clock every day. I mean, it was clockwork. Now that we're in the same space, she brought to my attention that I don't have that afternoon check-in.
Mm.
Man, and so, it was really good for her to be really honest how I had gotten away from what sustains us. And so whether it's your friendships, whether it's, your marriage, whether it's whomever, really be attentive to those rhythms with people that really are life-giving, because there can be a disruption. Heather, I'd be kind of curious, so as you and your husband have kind of worked through this, I mean, what are some of the things that you've had to make sure you don't take for granted and are intentional, even though in this space?
Yeah. Well, let me give a little context. I'm an off-the-chart extrovert. Like, I think everything's better with a friend. Going shopping, taking a nap, taking a shower.
Yes,
everything is better with a friend. So this has been a challenge for me. My husband is just as equally an off-the-chart introvert. So he is living the dream right now. The idea that there's no social expectation for him to be anywhere, that he can work from home. He's in IT with a school, and so he's helping with the online learning. And so we just established I'm upstairs and he's downstairs during the workday, and we usually have lunch together. I'm thankful for the dogs because they don't mind my extra, hugging and stuff. And then, I really just try to shut my computer at the end of the day, whatever that looks like, and be with him and do fun stuff together. So, but I think the only other thing I would say is don't be afraid to ask for what you need.
Good.
Rather than suffering and being miserable, whether it's from a friend or from your spouse or your roommate. If you need more space, if you need more affection, whatever it is, it's okay. You're not needy. It's just important to understand what you need, to be reasonable about it, but then to be willing to ask for it, especially during this time.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'll do this. I'll wrap this question up by saying this. This is what you all said, or what we said. Routine is important. We said structure. Stop playing. Routine is important. That's my wife, man. She just blew me a kiss, and she's trying to. I'm gonna turn the camera on you. Routine is important. Structure is important. Engaging, whether it's via social media, with family and friends, is important. Time with the Lord to listen and hear, that's important. And then, as you just said, ask for what you need. I think that's extremely important.
Good word.
Times.
Good word.
So that leads us to this next question. If you're on social media and you engage students the way we do, it's been a really hard season for a lot of our students, right? Like, they've lost a ton, right? So the question is, how have you engaged student culture in their loss of school, graduation, sports, friendships, just normality, from their perspective? Like, it's a different season. How have you engaged their culture? How have you engaged them personally and encouraged them to continue to keep their head up in this season? And a lot of youth leaders, right? We're dealing with that every day. Like, we're not experts. You're right, Heather. We're trying to figure this thing out as we go. But how have you personally had to engage in those conversations in this season with students?
Cornelius, why don't you take this one first, and I'll add on to you, sir.
Yeah, that'd be fair. Man, look, I'm 54. I'm not going to say I'm not tech savvy. I'm pretty good, but man, this was a different, man. I mean, look, I work primarily as it relates with kids, with elementary and middle school boys in our mentoring program. Fortunately, we had good relationships. I mean, group me, so I feel like I can call any parent right now and get a young child. But now engaging fourth graders, man, trying to get my seventh grade boys, man, look, and all they want to do is be on that game, and I'm not a gamer. And so, man, look, I have, I used to call out. There's a rhythm to what we do. We call every week. We were doing that anyway. So that's pandemic proof. So we were doing that anyway. So we did that. And then I went to Google Duo with permission from parents. So that's one way. So now I started, trying to engage, try to create my small group like we were. So that was happening. But the large group activity, it's taken us probably, we're going to start back up. And that's been probably the one that's been a little bit more difficult to replicate. It took a little bit more time to strategize. One of the things that I would say as I've engaged with students, and if I listen to other leaders who've engaged with students, how they're doing is really based on who's at the house.
Yep.
Man, look, I've got, one fella, it's the greatest thing in the world. Why? Because his mom and sister at the house, and he has food, and he does his homework, and he gets to play his games. He's good.
Yeah.
He doesn't really miss his friends. I got another young fat fella, once they heard they couldn't go back to school, he was sad.
Yeah.
He was really sad. But we got to hear him say it, and we affirmed him in it. And I got another young fella who he could care less. Man, look, he doesn't even, I'm on this video chat, and he won't even let us see his face. I just, Lord, what is going on? So the thing that we have done, though, and I said to my leaders yesterday, is we're trying. And what will be on the record is we're putting forth the effort and we're showing up. We are trying to show up. Whether it's working or not, we can figure it out and adjust, but let's keep trying. Let's keep getting back up at it. So that's really what we're trying. And now, even as we think about engaging virtually, Heather, I don't know if you thought about this, but man, like, we've had to rethink through the liability around virtual interactions too. So we've had to, look at some new documents that we're going to roll out with parents. And so there's just a lot of things that you have to think through to engage virtually. And it just takes a little longer, but that's some of the stuff.
I think that's such a good word, to not assume that we know the situation in every home.
Yep.
And the level of comfort, the level of fear, the level of consistency. You do have parents, Art, like you, that are doing their best to get lunch and to work with the math. And I'm certain there are other parents who are in bed all day long, and they've got nothing for their kid. And a kid is trying to troubleshoot all day long. And so my heart's been for those kids especially, and they probably often don't feel safe to let us know that that's their situation. They're kind of used to just spending for themselves. And so I know I've got a number of friends that are social workers that are really concerned for the kids that they work with on a regular basis, because they know what kind of home life that they are in right now. So, I will say this as a girl, that I am really concerned for my guys, my boys, during this time, because boys relate, and I've known this all my ministry career, relate through activity and fun and roughhousing. I mean, when I hang out with a boy, we shoot pool together, or we go to a place that has food and video games, and we alter back and forth what it is that we're doing. We walk dogs together. I mean, it's activity, and everything that we have currently, as far as an option to connect, is talking. And so I last week I got to interrupt a 7th grade boys Zoom call. So it was a life group of 14 7th grade boys and their leaders. And I popped in halfway through to surprise them. I've never seen so many digital backgrounds changing simultaneously. Their filters, they were just doing everything they could to be active on their Zoom call, because that's what they do, Whereas I've been in a girls' chat, and they were all muted, and they were like asking each other questions. And it was amazing the difference. And so I'm concerned, because you're right, Cornelius, they default to games. Most of them will default to that gaming world, which we know is even more isolation, awful language, awful images. And so I'm concerned for them. Let's see, I would say that my friend Ben, who's my co-minister at Wooddale Church, that he and I took the idea that we wanted to take our connection with students to social media, and we wanted to do it in small increments. So Ben did some research and found out that on YouTube, which is where most of my kids live, on YouTube, the most watched videos are 4 to 6 minutes long. And it drops off, like at 6 minutes, it drops off by 40% for engagement. And so we have been, for the last 4 weeks, producing videos that are only 4 to 6 minutes long. And we do usually 2 or 3 a week, and we put them on Instagram, Facebook, and we've got a YouTube channel. And 2 of them are fun, and 1 of them is devotional in its content. And that one is always on Wednesday because we meet on Wednesday nights as a youth group. So just trying to have, here again, a consistent rhythm that kids know that they can look for something that's a little bit more depth on Wednesday. And we have found that it's not only are the kids watching it, but their parents are watching with the kids, because oftentimes, like through Facebook, kids don't have an account. So mom is saying, hey, Heather's got another video up, Ben's got another video up. And I mean, we're talking like 2.1 thousand views, you guys, that one of these devos will get. People are sharing them and saying, this isn't just for junior hires, this is for all of us, and crazy stuff like that. And we found really good feedback on that. But we know now that our next level has to be that personal connection. So they're connecting to us and they're commenting, but there's not a back and forth. And so we're rallying our small group leaders to try to have them be the pastors to their kids, and to instigate Facebook, Instagram, and other kind of like Zoom calls and FaceTime calls, where it can be more of, I see you, I'm asking you a question, you're answering back. But it's hard because our leaders, my volunteer leaders, are at home trying to get their kids to do their homework, or they're unemployed, or they're, you know, alone in their home. And so it's a tough time, but I'm trying to lead by example. So we do Zoom calls with our leaders on Wednesday nights as a check-in, as our normal huddle time would be at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night, and just, you know, seeing them and helping them to feel connected. And I know when they leave that Zoom call, they all feel better. And it's hope that, would you help your kids to feel this way as well? We've continued our birthday cards. And I, for myself personally, I just pray a prayer every morning. Lord, today bring to my mind anyone that needs encouragement. And I just open that blank statement, because I've got a lot of students that I need to follow up with, and I can't do it all. And the Lord will bring people to mind that are not, you know, in my normal thought process. And oftentimes, and you guys know this when you've done it, somebody will say, you have no idea how much I needed to hear that today, or, you know, whatever it is. And so that's one thing I would encourage anyone who's listening. I don't care if you work with students or adults, or just be in a spirit of prayer throughout the day to say, Lord, I'm here. Who do you want me to bless? Who do you want me to encourage? Who do you want me to reach out to? And he will bring people to your mind. It's amazing. It's amazing. So those are just a couple thoughts initially.
That's good.
Art, you know, Heather, I would say this, as you are, I mean, again, since we're thinking about middle school boys together, and for those of you that are out there and you're trying to figure out how to engage with your boys, how does it make sense? How do we convene again? Tomorrow, what we've decided, we used to meet on Tuesday evenings for young commanders, right? That's our little mentoring group called. And we always start with a declaration. We always worked out. And then we always had like platoon time, where that's where we talk. And so what we're dropping it into is we've condensed it to 30 minutes. 30 minutes. And so we're going to do our declaration. We're going to work out for 10 to 15 minutes. And then we're going to have lunch and kind of do a little content, because what we found is that I've got to run them hard if I'm going to get them to talk. And so since they're in school and we need Zoom, we sent out to the parents to say, hey, this is what we need. And so tomorrow we're going to try it, but it takes it. And so just again, because to your point, if we don't do physical activity, that won't make sense. They're not going to sit down and go, hey guys, how are you doing? How was your day? How's your Now we have some good questions, but after we get them tired. So I would say to anyone out there that's trying to engage with them, shorter bites. shorter bites. It cannot be long, you know, but I will say this, like I've done cahoots with my middle school boys, right? They're dumb, but they did engage with me.
Yep.
Because it was activity based. To your point, it was activity based. And so
and competition. Competition is
there you go.
Yep.
I'm down for that, man. Like, oh,
Yep.
we're gonna do push-ups. Who can do that? Come on. They'll
That's
yell
right.
and
In
stuff
the name
tomorrow.
of Jesus, come on.
Come on.
I literally teach my kids that competition is a form of worship. Praise the Lord.
Come on.
I believe in it.
Dig it. I can dig it. Hey, it's funny, y'all fourth graders gonna be walking out like this in about 2 months.
Yeah.
So let me say this so I can keep us rolling here.
So that was a good word, Heather. Good
Yeah,
word.
you too.
I want to capture some of the things that you guys are saying. Effort is a big deal, right? You can do something. Try to do something.
Yeah.
Being consistent, right? And being connected, really, really important. Whether we engage on whatever platform it is, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is, just be consistent and have some effort to being able to do it. Like you hear both Corn and Heather talking through strategies and ideas, whether it's, you know, activity, push-ups, or whatever it is, right? There's opportunities for us to think through some of those things a little bit different. Prayer, huge deal, right? Like thinking about, even before you engage with kids, we're praying for kids. It's a big deal. And then Corn, you kind of hit on this, and I think it's important for, you know, folks that are watching this to really understand what season we're in. Hey, this is maybe the first time ever we get access to parents the way that we get access to people.
Oh man,
never done before, right? And so it's going to be really important for us as youth leaders to connect with parents. These are their kids.
Yes.
Right? So you have an opportunity to build credibility to engaging with parents. And so don't try to go around and, you know, get kids in their own, you know, social media platforms. Like, use an opportunity to connect with parents. Talk about what you're trying to accomplish. Let them know that you're praying for them and their family. And I'm pretty sure, man, you know, it'll create a bond and a connection that is, for our kids, probably one of the most amazing things that can happen. And so the only thing I'll add to that, go ahead, bro.
I was going to say, you know, as we're thinking out loud together in this, to your point about parents, parents are so grateful that we're trying. They're so, I mean, like, Heather, I don't know if you've seen that parents are, thank you. Thank you. I mean, just thank you. This may also be probably our best opportunity to grow what we're doing. Yeah. Because parents will talk to other parents about the effort that we put forth to at least try to stay engaged. So if you're out there and you're thinking like, man, like I said this to I want to see 64 boys involved in Young Commanders next year. In my mind, that was all physical, but now through this, I might say 30 of them could be in person, but there could be possibly 34 that aren't because of our innovation. Yeah. And so, but we can expand, because we're going to open it up next week to other kids who aren't currently in our program to come and invite. Why? Parents can invite their other friends to. So I just want to say this is also a great opportunity for us to grow our program.
Agreed. Completely agreed. Well, the only thing I'll add to that before I move on is, and I think this is really important, you know, I've had an opportunity to coach kids from middle school all the way up, you know, to seniors in high school. And I was on the phone with a couple of my former basketball kids that I coached who were in the process of graduating college this year, right? And so, and a couple of them are really missing out on some things. Yeah. Whether it's NCAA tournaments, graduation, you know, just some of those things. And I think it's important for us as leaders to know this. It's okay to lament with your kids. You know? Right? I think sometimes we want to fix it. Like we want to make things better for our kids because that's what we feel like we're responsible to do. And, you know, I'll never forget going through an understanding of what lament and celebration. My good friend Pablo Taola led us through this conversation. And for me, mentally, I'm like, oh man, making lament a thing with, you know, how you're witnessing the kids is a big deal, right? Like, man, yeah, that does suck, right? Like, let's sit in that for a minute. So that way we're not just trying to jump past this thing and you have to deal with it 5 to 10 years from now, right? When something triggers you. So There were students in the loss, man, because it is really hard. Like some seniors will, are missing out on prom and missing out on graduation and not really sure what to do with that. And that's hard, right? And so don't be so quick to fix it. Like just be okay with sitting in it and then allowing the Lord to walk you through that process, I think is really important. So
that's right. Amen.
Okay, next question. I think it's 7:42. We got about 15 minutes here before we wrap up. We got 2 questions left. I think we've kind of been hitting on some of these things, but what new things are you seeing in this season, right? In helping leaders and students overcome their reality. So you're talking through how we're engaging folks on social media platforms and how we're strategically trying to, engage with students. Have there been any things that we haven't talked about, new innovative strategies or tried and true methods, stuff that we've been doing for a long time that you guys would just want to, kind of drop a couple nuggets in for you that are listening?
I would love to, Art, I know what answer, I know I have an answer for the hope I profess. Heather, how has Wednesday nights with your leaders been?
You mean when we Zoom together?
Yeah, how's that been?
Yeah, we'll do our 3rd tomorrow night. And from the feedback I'm getting from them both on the screen and then what they text afterward, they have said, thank you. Like, I needed this. We're in a bit of a larger setting with our church. And so the junior high volunteer staff is kind of a subsection. It's a community. They look at it as their family. They're people that we do summer camps together and mission trips together and Wednesday nights together consistently. And we care about these kids. And so I think for many of them, it was a really good rhythm and an important relationship. And so it's been going good. We're going to offer a little bit more structure tomorrow night. So I know this sounds simple, but they get to do one of 2 things. They can either share their favorite verse that they like in the Bible and why, or second, they get to choose an item from their home that we've never seen and why it's important to them or why it's in their home. So that causes the introverts to have to share a little bit, but they don't have to share a ton. And it doesn't get super uncomfortable. And there'll probably be 35 or 40 of us on the call. And so we're going to have to stay focused, but it's been going well. And I feel really good when we're done. I'm trying to figure out how we can minister better to our individual volunteers because every one of them needs something different, right? And so I'm trying to be prayerful and think about that. And that's our next layer of connection as well.
That's good.
I would probably say, Art, that's the area that if I would say that has really been fun to watch is leaders, time with leaders. I don't know what it is, I don't know, maybe because we need it more or it's because we're so disconnected, there's less pretense to be transparent. There's less, that wall isn't there. I've had more laughter in leader meetings on Zoom calls. Listening to people and they, like you said, Heather, they're leaving. Like today I was in one, I did a training with a group of people and we didn't have a commute. And in Atlanta, that's a big deal. We didn't have to get in our cars and go somewhere. So you almost have this extra half hour that we just stayed on the call. And just what came up that wasn't intentional was so rich and so beautiful. And I'm just seeing that again. And not even me, it's them with each other.
Yeah.
We had a leader that contracted the virus. Right. And so, I called just to check on her, just to see how she's doing and really trying to honor her privacy. And then she put it in the group chat, right? And people just responded so beautifully. The compassion the leaders are extending to each other. I mean, it's just, and because of this, we're meeting more frequently, less. So for example, we used to meet every month, but now we meet every week for shorter periods of time. And I think that rhythm has really been a gift. So I would say art, the stuff we're trying with the kids is one thing. If I had to say, what have I seen God breathe into?
Yeah.
Bless and honor. It's been time with volunteers. I mean, like I was on the call last night with my mentors and we just laughed about haircuts. Like I cut my hair, but these guys couldn't get to barbers, man. Their stuff was all bumpy and man, they were itching and we're making jokes, but that was so rich. And that's really been the gift in this. And it's not about, it's always happy, but it's honest.
Yeah.
It's transparent. And so that was my one, like, amen for that, Lord. Thank you.
Well, here's what I will say. I think, when you talk about innovation, right, we're always thinking about ways to reach the masses, right? And you always center kids at everything we do. And I think a lot of times we don't realize how important it is, especially when we're moving. Like we live in a society where we are constantly moving, right? And so I have to confess, there have been a lot of times where it's become so kid focused that the time with leaders gets pushed to the very back, right? And so here's what's crazy. When you think about how we minister to kids, right? A kid, I remember doing this little survey with our high school students at one point, and we just said, hey, if there can be anything we can do better for you, what would that be? And the overwhelmingly response was not, oh, would you speak better? Would you do better games? Would you be more funny? Will you come hang out and give us more food? It was leadership in their life being more consistent, right? Like I wish that leader would have just been here longer, right? If there was anything I can change. And so when you think about how we can start to sustain our leaders, our youth leaders in this space, I think it's extremely important. No, man, we're going to be able to reach, especially now, kids are more responding to the one-on-one or one-on-two, whatever it is. Right? We're going to need our leaders to be able to lead out of the overflow, right? And so how we spend our time investing in our leaders is going to be extremely important. So it's crazy because it shouldn't be innovative, right? We should have been doing this for a long period of time, but I think getting back to the basics, whether this is a tried or true method, right? For some of us, this is just what we do. But for others, in this season, we can be so quick to rush into saving the day for kids and engaging kids that we forget that it's really, really important to invest in leaders. Okay.
My best responses to what we're doing were not mine. I didn't come up with it. It was one of my volunteers. I mean, they just said, "Hey, hey, Corn, what about this? Hey, let's go for it." And so if we don't, and I think also to giving them voice. Into how we respond has been really, it's been fun to watch. And
anything else you would add to that, Heather? Or we get to...
No, I think that's great. Nothing that hasn't been said. Okay.
Last question. We got about 10 minutes here, so I feel pretty good about moving this conversation.
Yeah, way to go, Art.
And I was a little nervous that they were just gonna let me do this, and 10 o'clock, 10:30, we in here like, yeah, and then I told him. So here's the last question, and I think this is an important question, right? And Corn, you and I have talked a little bit about this, so we have a little bit of a head start on it. But the question is, while many are focusing their time and energy on responding to the current COVID-19 situation, what are some practical strategies that can be implemented to better prepare us for the future, right? And so it's hard to think about the future right now because we are so connected to what's happening in front of us. But when we think about creating strategies and opportunities and platforms to be able to help us grow things, or I don't know what word I'm even looking for, but ideas that are going to help us sustain ministry and somebody's relationship with the Lord for the long term. Have you even had the time to think about 6 months from now? And if so, what are you thinking about?
Come on, Heather, you go first this time.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think here's something you need to know about me. God has made me to be consistent and steady I'm not a big fan of change. I'm a developer in my nature in the Strengths Finder, so I like to make things better and better and better, but I love consistency and planning. So the hardest part for all of this for me has been the ambiguity of the future. So not even like the anxiety of like, oh, but like we have a big trip called Project Colorado that we do every year with my outgoing ninth graders. It's looked forward to since they've been like in fourth grade. It's June 13th through 27th. And I was on a call with my boss today, and you know, the chances of that actually happening, me taking 75 of us in buses, you know, to Colorado for 14 days through multiple states, you know, it's been so hard to think about that. So I think one thing my boss has done a really great job of challenging us of just like, more than likely when things go back to normal, it's not going to be normal. Like how we know ministry and what it was in February, it probably never will be again. And so for me, just having to marinate in that for a little bit and be like, okay, so what could it look like? And how do things need to change versus what I see a lot of people doing is we just got to get through this. We just got to get through it. And once we can be back together, then everything will be great again. I think it's going to be different forever. But the ambiguity of that is really hard. So I would say the best thing that I've done so far as a leader is I'm holding the future loosely. And I'm trying to look around me and say, okay, what's working? What seems to be answering a felt need? And how can we engage that more? Because it might not just be something I'm doing for 2 months. This might be something I'm doing for the rest of my time in ministry.
That's right.
Agreed. 100%.
Great word.
Courtney, if you don't mind, I want to just say this, you know, to that point. You know, I have never really spent a ton of time on social media platforms. And I was hanging out with my to be 13-year-old daughter who reminds me that every day. She'll be 13 in 2 weeks. And she just, no, I'm about to be 13 in about 9 days. And I'm like, she tells me that every morning. But I'm hanging out with her and I'm watching how her life, you know, how her life is built. It's different than my life, right? And how she engages in relationships and how she engages in culture and even school, right? And I'm like, man, although I'm not great at those things, I should really start thinking about, you know, investing in some of those things because that will, you know, to some degree might be a part of our new normal. And so really starting to think about, okay, if we're going to be able to sustain what happens in the next, you know, 3 to 4 months, whatever it is, 2 months, we should really start to not feel like, as you said, we just got to kind of hunker down and weather through. No, this is an opportunity for us to learn, engage, and come out on the other side better for.
Yep.
I agree with you on that. Corn, you want to jump in?
So I don't have any answers. Check. Let me just say that. I don't have any answers. My mentor always asks me, that's not the first thing you strive for. Really the thing we should strive for is asking the right question, right? And so am I asking the right questions?
Yeah.
And so I'm not a strategist. So if you're not a strategic person, find somebody. There are people that thinking 4 years down the road, they're breathing. And breathing to me means it's the most natural thing they do. My friend Art is that way. So I have to read a lot. I'm reading everything about the economy. I'm reading everything about trends. I've gone back and I've looked at historical data. And so this is the question that I'm grappling with and I'm putting before my team. How can we accomplish our mission effectively and actually grow our organization 18 months from now with less? Let's go ahead and just say it now. We will not have more money. Cool. Let's just say it. Let's say it out loud. Hey, we may not have as things that we have now. So let's say, 18 months from now, God hasn't changed his mandate on us. It's not like kids are going anywhere. It's not like, So how are we going to provide a service that brings glory to God with fewer resources? Why? And I'll say this, I talked about Heather, and to everyone who out here, I shared this with Art. I was on a call 2 weeks ago listening to this gentleman, A.R. Bernard, and he said this: when you respond to a crisis like the one we're in, there's usually three stages. There's relief, there's rebuild, and then there's rehab. There's relief, there's rebuild, and then rehab. And so what we're watching right now is people throw an inordinate amount of resources and energy into relief.
Yeah.
And so in a year from now, and 6 months from now, we're going to be looking at who is there to rebuild. So I've given myself the permission, kind of go, I'm not in the relief business. I'm going to engage with my students now, but I'm going to spend my time preparing for rebuilding and rehabbing, because that's when people are going to be out of their houses. Those mental health issues are going to be real.
Yeah.
Who they were when they went in is not who they are when they're coming out. What are the resources that we're going to need? Who are the partnerships that we need to align with, so that we can broker, because we can't pay for it like we used to. We have to be better brokers. And so those are the questions I'm grappling with now. And I've done my cash flow projection. Okay. You know, for those of us that are in the nonprofit, if you're out there and you're in a nonprofit, you know, most people are saying there's not going to be as much money at the end of the year. There's not going to be as much money, you know. So if that's true, let's continue to do some of the practical things we can do, but let's plan now. Let's plan now. I'll say this and I'll be done. And so whenever I grapple with a question, I always try to go to scripture to kind of go, okay, this ain't new. If there's nothing new under the sun, who's been there? And so where the Lord led me was Ezra. And Ezra is the book that covers, you know, after they've been sequestered in Babylon for 80 years. Now they have to come out of that time and begin to rebuild. So Lord, what are some of the things that I can learn? So one of the things that I took away from that is, be careful about who you say yes to. Because there's some people that will want to align themselves with you, Heather. Your church might be healthy. You have all these things. Hey, you don't need to say yes to everybody. We need to be very prayerful and judicious in who we say yes to, and some of those external challenges. And then later on, when Ezra comes, then we're going to have to deal with some of the internal. So I'm trying to do some of that internal work now, some of those things that could undermine God's mission of rebuilding and rehabbing. And so I don't have the answers. The Word of God does. So I'm just trying to look at how Ezra and the people that came out of Babylon, are there some principles that I can glean as I think about trying to reestablish God's presence on the heels of captivity, quote, quote. So that's what I'm sitting right there. But I've given myself permission. I'm not in the relief business.
Yeah, that's a good word. Art, if I can just add one scripture that I keep going back to, not just with myself, but with students, is the book of Job. And, you know, I think of how God loved Job, and yet for some reason allowed this tragedy in his life. And for over 30 chapters, everyone's talking, and God's not talking. Everybody else is giving their opinion. And then in chapter 38, the title says, "The Lord Speaks." And if you're looking for something to visit this week in your quiet time, I would suggest that you go there. First of all, I love God's sense of humor. You know, he says, "Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man, and I will question you, and you will answer me." And then he just goes on to say, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Have you ever told the lightning bolts where to go? Have you ever said to the proud waves, this is where you go and you go no further? And he just goes on and on and on about this majestic power that he has. And so I think, for those of us who struggle with anxiety or ambiguity, I think to come back to this and say, not only is he not surprised, Art, like you said, but God's not going to waste this.
Yeah.
He will not waste it. And so my mantra has been, I don't want to waste it. I know God isn't going to waste it. So rather than complaining, rather than being sad, I'm going to let myself be there, because David does it all the time, right? He laments, but then what does he do? He comes back around and says, but I will choose to praise you. So I'm going to do that, understanding that we're going to come out on the other side and it's going to be different, yes. But I believe that it's going to be, God's hands are going to be all over it.
Yep.
So
I'll just close by saying this. I think you guys did a great job of summing that last piece up. There's nothing new under the sun, and so I think as we engage in, student culture, student life today, we know that God cares deeply about our students, right? And so somebody said this to me not too long ago. Hey, a healthy you is a healthy everybody around you, right? And so as we think about engaging youth and coming up with the most amazing ideas and strategies to engage, listen, man, take time to connect with the Lord, get healthy, get your leaders in a good spot, get healthy, and then let's ride this thing out and see where the Lord takes it. But Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not to your own understanding, acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will direct your paths. Don't be so quick to rush to the practical. Go to the spiritual piece first.
Yeah, that's right.
What God leads out of that. So. And you're back, man. So that means we're supposed to be done.
There's our accountability right there.
Great.
No, like the Holy Spirit, like boom, here you are. You was there. I saw you, but I didn't see you. You was there. I felt you, and now there you are. Okay, what up, bro?
This session has been great. I'm literally getting text messages on my phone, my watch, in the box, everywhere. It's just lighting up with how great this has been. For everybody watching, I dropped Heather and Cornelius's information in the chat. Panel, I think I sent you guys messages over and over again on accident. Excuse me, technology, going a little crazy. But for everybody else that's watching, their information's here on the side. I also will add Art's email, unless Art, there's a website that you want to type in the chat. But other than that, I can add your email.
Process. We don't have an email yet, but it's in process.
Okay, cool. So those things are there. And then we're going to move into our Q&A section of tonight. But before we get into that, I'll let some of you all that are watching think of some questions. But I have a couple people who just made comments. And I just want to, I don't know if you all got to see this because you were talking. And
how do we see them?
If you hover over the bottom of our faces, the very bottom, there's a toolbar. And then there should be a chat button you can see.
Oh, yeah. Yep, got it.
I just want to read some of the feedback. Jaleesa from Waukegan, excuse me, I said Chicago earlier. She says she's very grateful to hear from you three. Thank you for your vulnerability, your honesty, your transparency in this new stage for all of us. Also had Ardith Duke, who is one of our board members, come on and say she has no questions, just a comment. Thanks for shining your light on youth, and especially the youth who are in bad situations or not so great homes. Also getting text messages from our staff saying how good this night has been. So thank you all so much. I'll kick off our questions. Again, if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A box or in the chat, and I'll be reading those for our last few minutes. But for me personally, Heather, you were hitting on that. I think you said your pastor or a leader at your church was saying that this might change what we do forever. And again, none of us really know, so I'm not expecting you to be the guru with the right answer. But in what ways did he see this changing things forever? And same to you, Art and Cornelius, what ways do you think we should be thinking differently about how this might look potentially when the world goes back to normal?
Sure. Well, Anthony, young one, let me just tell you that before 2001, when my husband took me to the airport, he could walk me all the way to the gate He could kiss me and watch me and wave me onto the plane, and then he would go back out through security and go back to his car.
Wow.
And ever since 2001,
Mm-hmm.
that didn't happen and has never happened since.
Mm.
And so one of the interesting questions people have been asking is, what precautions have been put in place now during this pandemic that will continue to be here? You know, so temperature taking is a classic example. They're taking the temps of pilots that come into the airport and whatever, and they're going to put it into TSA. It's going to be some kind of a group testing as you walk through. And my guess is that'll stick forever, that forever our temps will be taken again. So,
wow.
you know, one of the things that my boss Kyle, he said is, okay, what if coming out of this, right? They're not going to just let us start meeting 3,000 people again,
Right.
64,000 people. It's going to be a merge. Who knows how long that merge will be? He said, but what if when we do get to meet again, they say no more groups over than 50, you know, and we've got probably about 150, 175 that meet on a Wednesday night. So he said, are you going to have group A, group B, and group C, you know, that come in throughout the night? Are you going to meet in separate rooms? Are you going to meet at different times? I mean, just talking about things like that. And I was like, oh my goodness, because I was more of the mindset of once we get back everybody together in that room, it's going to be like, whoop, whoop, as an extrovert,
Right.
you know, I just can't wait. And I'm a hugger. And so, but just thinking through like a large group church meeting potentially could maybe not happen again. I mean, I don't know. It blows my mind because we don't have anything to compare it to.
Right.
But what if it doesn't? And so just trying to think through things like that. And, you know, one of my prayers of this whole thing is that families will realize that their priorities were off, and that they'll say things like, we don't want so many activities in the junior high at Wooddale Church because we want to be home together as a family, or we want to be together more. And so maybe programming is going to change.
Yep.
And there won't be so much. I don't know. So those are just a couple things that we talked about.
Super helpful, because I know I definitely haven't thought about those things. So super helpful.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So any predictions for you?
Man, one, I'm I get out here and I'll sit there with Art and I'll think through different things. I actually think what you said, Heather, I think is a great opportunity. The one thing about disaster is that innovation comes out of it. And so, so I think if we're nimble, we need to be lean, which is different than Heather. So Heather, your church is how large?
We have about 4,000 that meet on our campuses.
So I used to be on a staff that, we have for about 4,000 members. And so their ability to respond is different than mine. And I would say if you're a smaller nonprofit or a smaller organization, you may be positioned better to respond to the market than, we're looking at Heather 4,000. We're thinking, oh man, I'll never be that. Well, that might be a blessing. Why? Because I do think that one of the things that's surfacing is how do we come alongside parents and support them better in the work with their kids? I think this like, hey, I'm engaging with more parents. And so now as I think through training, being someone who tries to provide individualized training, how can I tailor make that to not make me the hero, but make me the supporter of the parents to do some stuff with their kids that they just probably tried for the first time, Art.
Yeah.
But you weren't resourced back then. But what if we say, hey, it was always supposed to be that way in God's design, it says some Deuteronomy 6, what's in you, you're supposed to do at the house first. But they've kind of abdicated that to us, the professional, and maybe if we posture ourselves differently, and it could allow us, and I'll say this, because how do we as extension of church partner with Heather in supporting what she's trying to do? Because if you're a nonprofit, Man, Heather has the kids. She doesn't have the resources. We have leaders. Man, there's some stuff we can do some collaborating with to get, so I'm thinking about collaboration and different ways to train people that probably didn't think that way before. But I'm nimble. I can respond to the market quicker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what
But
Art and I
now,
talk about. Go ahead.
Cornelius, I would have to be very prayerful as to whether or not I would say yes to you, because a wise man once told me, don't say yes to everybody who asks.
That's it. You know what? And get your panelists, bro. Get your panelists. No, but she's right. She's right. But hey, I'll say this to anybody. Heather, as you think about this, you have what other people don't, right? And so you probably can broker more opportunities for people who are struggling right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're on their last leg. And so you
Yeah.
can invite some people to do some things, and you ain't even got to spend another dime if you're willing to share.
Mm-hmm.
Why you giggling, Art?
It's here's what I would say when you talk about willingness to share, right? We are going to be I think we're going to encounter a new season where the things that we are not used to doing, we're going to be called to do, right? And so whether it's partnerships, whether it's encouraging parents to be a little bit more, aware of kids, right? Like, it's easy to drop my kids off on Sunday to Heather and be like, all right, I'm gonna go get a word and you do your thing, and I'm gonna come back, and then we're gonna go through daily life, and there's so much opportunity potential. And I will say this, I love to think and dream about the future, right? And so I will say, man, change is not bad, right? Like, we are constantly engaging in change every day, right? And so to your point, Heather, before 2001, people being able to walk in, like I mentally went there. Like, I remember going through Stapleton Airport here in Denver, Colorado, and being able to go all the way up to the gate and being able to see folks off as they fly away, and stuff changed, and we were able to adapt, right? And new normal became new for us. And then pretty soon it was not new anymore. It was old, right? And so, just an encouraging word is, change is, I think a lot of times people get really nervous about, change. And I'm like, man, there's so much cool opportunity from it. So,
Absolutely. Well, thank you all.
How many younger people on this call that are your peer group?
So yeah, we have all of our apprentices are on, and we have 5 right now. So there's 5 apprentices, myself, my wife, and we're all on the call right now.
Okay, so I want to say this publicly, and I believe this wholeheartedly. We need you. I would say that one of the things that is going to be different is, what does mentoring look like? I believe Cornelius Williams believes that every person that's my peer group, baby boomers, needs to be mentored by Anthony.
Amen.
I would say that, and I would also say this, Anthony, what we have, like what I can't offer technologically, hey, I'll keep showing up though. I'll hang in there.
Yeah.
So if you allow me to hang around, I can still be of value. I'm okay with not being in the front. You got a nice hat, nice glasses, good look, all the new words, technology, but together, we can do a lot more. And so I really want to say that, and I always thought this before, but collaboration. And I want to say to everybody that's younger than me, we need you. And please don't put me to pasture, because I still have something to offer. But I don't know how to make myself available. So I will say that part of the new normal is, how do we coexist where it's like millennials and baby boomers and all the memes that go with that. The new normal will require that we work together in different ways. So I just want to say that out loud. I need you, bro. I need you. I do.
And we need you too. We do. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, God is good. I've been having conversations around that in different ways all day about just exactly what you just said. How can we contribute up and others contribute down to really meet the needs of right now? So
Corn, I just text Ant today. I was like, bro, I need to talk. We need to talk.
Literally, that came to mind.
Really?
Yeah,
Literally.
I'm like, man, in this season, we're gonna need each other for real. We're gonna really need each other to figure this thing out. So, couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Yeah, God is good. All right, I'll move on to the next question. Scott Lundeen says, you all have talked about mentors and supervisors in your life. Can you talk about the role the leaders continue to play in your life while you're leading others? Again, kind of the same thing. I think the Spirit is moving and impact. And what impact does that have during crisis?
Oh man. Yeah, listen, I'm 40 years old, right? And so for me, I wouldn't be able to function without the spiritual leadership and guidance from folks that, are a little bit further along in life than I am. And folks that God is uniquely prepared and equipped to be able to help me get through the season of life that I'm in right now. I mentioned this at the beginning of the call. Corn's been walking with me as a mentor for the past 2 or 3 years. And so we're not that far off in age, but I mean, Corn, you 54? Is that right, bro?
Yep.
And I'm 40, right? And so there are some things that I am starting to engage in life that Corn has already been through, right? And he's already had an experience to it. So I will say this, man. I think when you're younger, it's easier to say, man, I'll figure it out, right? I'll bump my head and I'll make my mistakes and I'll learn. And I'm like, that is such a waste of time,
Yeah.
Right? Like, it is such a waste of time. And I would say to not have leaders in your life, I mean, only furthers the hardship, I think, at times. And the journey than it may need to be, right? And so for me personally, I'm like, man, the man I am today, the husband, the father, the ministry leader, is because of the folks that are above me that are still consistently pouring into and speaking life into me every single day. And so I'll never forget, man, a good friend of mine, Verley Sangster. Verley is, I think, 86 now, 86 years old. And he is constantly encouraging and speaking life and wisdom into me. And I'm like, there's things that he experienced 40 years ago that I'm just experiencing right now. And I'm like, you think because he lived in 1970, early 80s, and that was his time, like, yeah, this is my dude. I'm like, no, like, there's so many things that are still so similar and connected, right? And even with my mom, there's just so many folks that, yeah, I guess I can ramble on for 20 minutes, but I would just say there's no way in the world I can live and be who God has called me to be without the spiritual guidance of those above me. So.
I would just, again, Anthony, I just said it right there. Scott, I think it's a great question. I think that there are those who we walk with always in deep covenant relationship. So there's a natural to that. But then I would say this, in times like these, I think you have to be open, prayerfully postured to hear from the Lord. And then, like, man, again, I got some nuggets from Heather. I've never met Heather. I've never met her. She's in Minnesota, but she dropped some dimes tonight, man.
Oh.
And I need to be open to receiving from whomever God will cross my path, which starts with me being in a posture of prayer and openness to hear from God. I mean, it's kind of like, bruh, you ain't arrived. Be open. Yeah. And then here I am on a call tonight. Heather's just dropping some dimes. I didn't even know about 4 to 6 minute videos, and she had data to back it up. I mean, I'm going, man, Corn, okay. I got to find somebody to do some 4 to 6 videos. That's a dope idea, man. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. So Heather, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm not sure quite how to say this without sounding controversial. Outside of my supervisors, I don't have a mentor that I meet with on a regular basis. And sometimes I feel guilty when in the Christian world, I hear people talking about that. They get together every week and they read through accountability questions and, they read Andy Stanley books together. And it wears me out a little bit. I am a highly relational person, and longevity and friendship and relationship is very, very important and natural to me. So some of my greatest mentors are my 5th grade camp counselor, Carla, who was 19 when I was 12. And she spoke truth into my life. She's the first person outside of my family that said, you are amazing, you are strong, you are a leader. And she is someone that I get together with now, and it's like this natural mentorship. I don't say, let's read this book together. We spend life together. Patty, Tina, Linda, when I first started at Wooddale, I was 23. The whole ministry was in my lap. I didn't know anything. And they came alongside of me as moms who were in their early 40s, who were well-read, and financially they had generosity, and they just poured into me.
Amen.
And I continue those relationships. Good. And so the beautiful thing is when crisis comes, it's not a crisis call to those women, because we've continued to be a part of each other's lives. And so for those of you who are younger, look around you. Who's a champion for you? Who's someone who spoke truth into your life and called out gifting, who's given you opportunities because they believed in you? Those are people that you want to keep with you the rest of your life. Not just for a season, but for the rest of your life. So
that's so good.
Agreed.
That's so good.
So,
and then last question is a piggyback off of Scott's question, and you just answered it a little bit, Heather. And thank you for that you uniquely sharing that, because there might be somebody who doesn't have a formal mentor that just had the light bulb go off that, oh, I have resources, I have people in my life that I can tap into, whether we have officially established the mentor relationship or not. So thank you for that perspective. Scott, I was asking, how did these people come into your life? So you just answered it a little bit, Heather. You can answer again if you would like. But he said, how did those people come into your life, whether it be lifelong friends or mentors? And did they pursue you, or did you pursue them?
Man, so
you're laughing. I need to know what's behind that laugh.
well, man, because look, one, I was laughing because what Heather said earlier, just with regards to, it's not always prescriptive, right? You know, I mean, I wish I could say that it was, hey, you know, I'll say this. I went to counseling because I was deeply hurt by the disappointment with Black men in my life. Here I am. I grew up in Tacoma, Washington. And here I'm matriculating into these leadership roles, thinking that the Black men, the Black pastors and these Black men, that they should, hey, Corn's a good dude. He's going to grind. He loves the Lord. He's out here doing work with these kids. Let me take him under my wing, man. He's hungry. Man, he's teachable, blah, blah, blah. And man, I went to counseling because these jokers they didn't do that. They wanted my allegiance, but there was no reciprocity. And I was 38 hot, man. Look, I was hot. And so I'm in there with my counselor, just da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And God said this, man, look, he says, man, you've been looking for something that I already provided.
Wow.
And so my friend David Harper Heather said it well, and I hope that you guys hear it. Don't miss who God has already put there. No, they didn't say, hey, can I be your mentor? No, they didn't come up and say, hey, I think let's read a book together. None of that. But what they did says, hey, you know what? Hey, how are you doing? I was praying for you. Hey, I hope you're doing well. Hey, just, you know, and they're gentle. They're not even almost like, man, God may have provided someone already there. And so I would say, look for that. And then there are times when I have pursued some people, right? But typically, as for me, it's always in the context of doing something together. So Art and I's relationship evolved as we were doing something together. I'm a dude. You know, I'm just not going to sit down and do some coffee with you and go, hey, man, let's buddy up. Nah, man, I'm good, bro. No, but if we do something together and then I have a high value of reciprocity. If I do not perceive that you also value reciprocity, you can kick rocks, right? Because, man, look, man, I ain't got time for that. So I think there's a little bit more organic. You know, I've been intentional, but God has usually been very gracious And so if you're out there, you may need to use a formal process to help you to get in proximity with God's answer for you. And I'm down for that. There's some of us that are older that need to initiate and make it more pronounced too, for the young cat to say, no, cat, you come over here and sit down, bro. Let me spend time with you. And so I would say, there's no exact science, but,
That's good. That's helpful. Thank you.
Because Art mentors me, man. Art's my man, man. Art's my man. Look, I don't even do stuff without Art. He be throwing all that little, hey, corn, black, hey, corn. Man, no, man, I be bugging Art, man. Art, I flew out to Denver. Yeah.
Listen, man, here's what I would say. I believe in a fully alive, active God, right? And so I do believe, praying. There are certain seasons that we all walk through where we know we need something very specific, right? And I think the first place we should look to get it is from the Lord. And I'll never forget reading, I go to Colorado Community Church of Aurora with Pastor Robert Jelinas. And Pastor Jelinas, man, he wrote this book called I think it's called Discipled by Jesus. Oh my God, right? Changed the way I thought about mentorship and where I'm going to seek it, because I think it's easy to go seek it from people first before we go to the Lord. But in the process of seeking it through the Lord, I'm able to say, man, this is the season I'm in, and here's some things I would really love to walk with somebody in. And you can call it supernatural, whatever you want, but somehow, some way, if you just pay attention to it enough, you open your eyes and you'll see, oh, there goes that dude Corn, right? Oh, there goes that, whoever it is, right, for you. And when you're paying attention to the things you need most, the Lord has a pretty sweet way of putting, people in your life in a way that's going to help you kind of, maneuver through certain seasons. And so for me, I'm like, man, go to the Lord, seek it from the Lord first, and then pray specifically the needs that you have and watch the Lord respond. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. Heather, did you want to chime in at all on that last question before we close?
Nope, I'm good. I said what I needed to say.
You did.
And I agree with the guys as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. If you're watching, panel, thank you so much. I think this started as a conversation about youth ministry, and then it turned into family, and then it turned into listening to God and finding mentors and building up the tribe. So God took this conversation in ways that none of us could have planned. So thank you for just being here and being open to what the Spirit was doing tonight. I'm going to close us with the Lord's Prayer. We will be here next week. You can go to the iSSACHAR events page, iSSACHAR website events page, and you will see our next conversation next Tuesday. Facebook Live didn't work out tonight, but we're gonna do some troubleshooting, and I'm gonna post this on Facebook afterwards. So be looking for that. If you want to rewatch this, or send it to a friend. I'll close us with the Lord's Prayer, and then you all can go back to your beautiful families and enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much, panel. Thank you so much.
Yep.
So our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen, bro. Thanks, y'all. Great
Good work, Heather.
Nice to
Good
meet you
job, bro,
guys.
Anthony.
Right,
Good job, bro.
Thank you so much.
And send me one of those hats, bro.
That is a dope hat, man. That is dope, man. Dope.